What's up guys, Alan Brock here, and today we are going to be giving away the lavalier mic, but more importantly we're going to be talking about a video that I promised I would make probably about a year ago, and that is how to scan color negative film, specifically how to scan Kodak Ektar. Now, if you are unfamiliar with film, there's basically two types of color film. There is slide film or positive film. That's going to be films like your Fuji Velvia, Provia, things like that. And basically, what you see on the film is what you get. It looks exactly like it did in supposedly in real life. Color negative, on the other hand, is exactly what it sounds like. It's negative. So on your negative, on the piece of film, your bright spots are going to be dark. Your blues are going to appear yellow, reds are going to appear cyan, magentas are going to appear green, things like that. Everything is reversed. And the reason we shoot color negative film is because of its extremely high dynamic range. Velvia only has a dynamic range of somewhere between 4 and 5 stops. Anything that's brighter is going to be pure white, anything darker is going to be pure black. Color negative film, on the other hand, there was an article I read online that says Portra has something like 14 stops of dynamic range. Personally, I have seen Ektar hold detail across 10 stops of dynamic range. Now what you're going to be sacrificing with that film is basically two things. One is the saturation of the colors. Velvia is known for its extreme saturation. Portra and Ektar, even though Ektar says it's highly saturated, those films are going to be a little more muted. Not a problem. If you want the saturated look, you can add that in post later. The biggest thing and the biggest learning curve for me that you sacrifice is ease of scanning. For at least my experience, Ektar was extremely difficult to scan, very frustrating. I almost wanted to give it up at many times along the line, but I've kind of developed a workflow over the years. Now I use Epson Scan. That's the basic software that came with the Epson flatbed scanner, the V700 series, the V800 series. I have tried Silverfast and ViewScan, as well as a kind of random plugin for Photoshop called Color Perfect. And to me, the ease of use of Epson Scan, I just kept going back to that. It is basic software, but it gives me everything that I need to scan. So like I said, I have kind of developed a workflow over the years using Epson Scan and then transferring it into Photoshop to finish. I'm going to show you guys that today. Two things that are going to make your scanning life a lot easier. Color negative film does not do well if it's underexposed. So the way I expose color negative film is I find the darkest spot in the scene, and I will place that at the very darkest at 2 stops underexposed. So if I meter that, and let's say I get a 1 second reading on my meter, I will shoot a shot at 1/4 of a second that places it 2 stops underexposed. I'll take one shot there and then one shot with it 1 stop underexposed. So again, in the 1 second example, if 1 second's my darkest shadow, I will take 1/4 of a second exposure and a 1/2 second exposure. I don't care where the highlights go. Like I said, color negative film has extremely high dynamic range, especially on the highlight end. It's basically impossible to blow this film out. So two things are going to make your scanning life easier. First, do not underexpose this film. Don't let your highlights get below -2, and if you take doubles, take your second shot where your shadows, I think I may have said highlights, but shadows, don't let your shadows go beyond -2. Take a second shot where they're at -1. The second thing that's going to make your scanning life easier is scene selection. Color negative film does not typically do well in landscape scenes that have very low dynamic range. So if you're shooting something that has 5 stops or less, have some Velvia with you, shoot it on that. But if you shoot extreme dynamic range and you expose it correctly, it can give you just beautiful results. There's something about the contrast in it that I've found to be just extremely realistic. Several of my favorite shots from the past couple of years, more and more of those are starting to come on Ektar. So enough rambling by me. Let's get started. I'm assuming you know how to load the scan, so let's just fire up Epson Scan and get right to it. Alright, so I've got the film loaded just using the standard Epson plastic film holders. They do well enough for me. Just a few settings here. Obviously, film with a holder, color negative film, 48 bit color is going to give you your best color bit depth, your best transition between colors and tones. Always scan at 3200 DPI. Anything else is overkill. And let's get a preview. Actually, I've already previewed it here. Let's pull it up. And you can see this is just suboptimal. This is a beautiful slot canyon in Utah last year, and this is just horrid. Kodak says this film is easy to scan, but they sit on a throne of lies. Basically, it's best to kind of think of this as a raw file. You've got all this data here. This wall over here to the right is very dark, but all the details are still there. This area of highlights back here is very bright, but there's still detail there, and the film retains all that. And with it being kind of a raw file, you can kind of do with it what you want as long as you get rid of these color casts here. So in the beginning, this was kind of intimidating, but I've developed a workflow over the years. I'm not saying it's perfect or the best way to do it, but it does work for me. If you guys have any tips, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'm by no means the best scanner in the world, but like I said, this has started to work for me over the years. So with these little adjustment tabs, the first thing I'm going to do is open up a levels adjustment here. And I just really kind of want to rough this in to begin with. I want to make sure that no data is clipped. Right now, you can see our highlight slider is clipping a lot of this bright area. That's going to be this glow back here, which obviously we don't want to clip. So let's slide that just to the edge of the data there. Make sure nothing is blown out. And same thing with the shadows. I want to make sure nothing is clipped, but that we're getting full contrast out of that. After I do that for the brightness for the whole image, I want to do the same thing for the colors. Again, I'm not really looking here at the image for color correction just yet. I just want to kind of rough this in just to make sure no data is clipped. Green channel is pretty good. Blue channel, a little bit off there. We're going to make some more fine-tuned adjustments to this in just a second. But we're starting to get a little bit better image here. Now it's still very washed out. This is more like a raw file though. Data is still there, washed out, not much color, not much contrast. Now I have found that in Epson Scan, the next tab I open up is this brightness, contrast, and saturation. You can give color negative film a ton of saturation here. I'm talking mid 50s. And it doesn't look really cartoonish like maybe Velvia or something would look. So keep that in mind. Don't be afraid to crank up the saturation here because it can accept a lot. Even though, again, Kodak markets it as a very saturated negative film, it can take a lot of saturation. I think I'm still a little bit overexposed. Now, there's different ways to handle exposure, but I just typically open up a curves adjustment here. I'm going to add a couple points to it and bring down our exposure, kind of give it an S curve as well. I don't mind that the upper right here is getting very dark. You can check your levels down here at the bottom. You can see your red, green, and blue. It's not clipped. There are no zeros in there. There's still data there, but again, I don't mind that it's getting dark. That's what the scene looked like. Now I want to start to fine-tune my color a little bit. And to do that, it's important to remember your complementary colors. Red and cyan, green and magenta, blue and yellow. That's going to help you know which sliders to adjust. Down here in the rocks, these rocks, as you can imagine, a pretty neutral tone. And if you look at them right now, they've got a lot of cyan in them, probably some green. So to take care of the cyan cast that's kind of the most prominent here, I'm going to adjust the red channel slider here. Now, one thing I want to caution you on, the highlight slider in Epson Scan is just abnormally powerful. When you slide it, it makes very extreme adjustments. So take note of what the exact number is when you start to slide it, because you can really screw up an image quickly by sliding the highlights. But let's just take this down just a bit to take away some of that cyan. And look what this is doing to our image. Just really bringing in a more realistic look to it. I mean, we've got the orange glow back there. Our rocks down here, perhaps still a little bit of maybe a blue or a cyan. Let's see what sliding the midtones does. Midtones will change your color, but not quite as dramatically as the highlights do. Yeah, just a slight midtones there. And look, you're starting to get these colors in the wall that moved, didn't it? I'm using a Wacom tablet, and it's very difficult to make fine-tune adjustments with that. But what I was saying is you're starting to get some of these reds and oranges in the wall. The color is more realistic. I think we may still have a touch of green. Now, this green does typically go quickly magenta, so you got to be careful with that when even sliding the midtone. So what I'm going to do, it was at 1.5, I'm going to take it at 1.45 and click off of that to see the adjustment. That's pretty good. I think I'm still a touch bright here, so you can change that in the curves or go back to the levels here, and let's just bring that down a bit. Yeah, now we're really starting to sing with this image. Now, I know I've kind of gone over all this and gone back and forth, but I'm actually not too careful about my editing in this Epson Scan, and the reason being is, for some reason, I don't know why, but when I scan this image and then open it in Photoshop, the image I get in Photoshop doesn't look exactly like this image that I see here. There's something a little bit off with the calibration. I don't know if it's my software, the color profiles I have, but it's not exact. So again, I'm not going to beat myself up and really fine-tune it in Epson Scan. That's what we're going to do in Photoshop. There's still probably a little bit of cyan in there. So let's just see what our reds do. And honestly, that's looking pretty good. Bring down the exposure a little bit. So at the very end, I'll show you where we started with all this, but that's roughly what I'll do in Epson Scan. This looks pretty much ready to scan. Again, this wall over here is very dark, but it was dark in real life compared to the glow. Let's scan it, open it in Photoshop, and we'll finish things up. Okay, so this is how the scan opens up in Photoshop. Now, I've gone ahead and cleaned out the dust and actually blended it together. I have to scan in pieces, so I've joined it together. But I want to show you what I was talking about as far as differences probably with color profiles. It always does this, and I have no idea why. But you can see my final scan in Epson Scan, my final edit there. Notice the rocks, how there's more of a cyan blue tint here, and then over here it's much warmer. I don't know exactly what's going on. Let me know if you use Epson Scan. Let me know if this happens to you, or if it's just something that I've done with my color profiling. It's not a big deal because I corrected out no problems, but yeah, that's just kind of a weird anomaly I've noticed, but no big deal. This is what we get in Photoshop here, straight out of the scanner. I'm going to go over my workflow here. The first thing I do is open up two curves layers here. The first layer here I set to a color blending mode. I use this to take out any color casts I have. So again, know your complementary colors. If you increase your reds, it'll obviously make it red. If you take out red, it's going to give it more of a cyan cast there. So what I did in this was just give it a little bit more red in the midtones and took out a little bit of green there. It's maybe a touch magenta looking at it for a second time here, but that's what I've got going on color correction wise. The first set of curves is for color. The second is for contrast. And this really punched it up. This is to taste. It may be too contrasty for some of you, but yeah, I like the contrast because it was a high contrast scene. And the beauty of color negative film is you can make the contrast whatever you want. So I take the contrast and just really punch it up. There's still detail in the wall over here. Nothing is pitch black. But that really gives it punch and really makes the image sing. And honestly, this is close to the difference in values. I mean, this glow was really bright and this wall right here was getting no light. I don't remember exactly how many stops difference there was, but it was a high amount. This is what that curve looks like. Really not even a contrast curve. I just darkened it some. And then for sharpening, I do sharpening using what's the word I'm looking for? A high pass filter. I'll cover that in a different video. And then I use a final layer of unsharp masking. But as I zoom in here, I mean, just the batik on the walls here is tremendous detail. Ektar does have tons and tons of details. It's every bit the rival of a Velvia as far as capturing detail and fine grain goes. So anyway, guys, that's how I scan color negative film. I know I was kind of going back and forth in Epson scan between these, well, if I can get it to pull back up, between curves and levels, but that's just kind of my workflow there. Let me show you, let me reset this and show you where we started from to show you just what an amazing difference it makes. So we'll reset everything. And let me open the Photoshop image. So here on the right, that's what Epson Scan threw out at us. This is our final image here with sharpening, contrast, color all added. Guys, I hope this helps. Ektar is a wonderful film. It really is. Be sure and shoot it correctly. Do not underexpose it. Choose your scenes wisely. Only shoot it on high contrast scenes like this one. And the results it will give you are really amazing. Try not to get frustrated with it. Don't give up on it. Hopefully this helps. If any of you are more experienced scanners than I am and have some tips you want to share, be sure and list those in the comments below. So I guess that's it. Without further ado, let's go ahead and give away a microphone. Alright guys, so I hope that helped. Let's give away a microphone. Last week I told you guys I was giving away not a camera, which one person got upset about, but yeah, more power to you. But not a camera, but a microphone, a Giant Squid Omni lavalier mic. There were 36 people in the comments that said they wanted to be entered into it. So I did a Google random number generator between 1 and 36, and it came up on Frederick Bono. I know I'm not saying that right. B-O-N-N-E-A-U. Frederick Bono Photography is his channel name. So Frederick, if you're watching this video, shoot me a message through email, my social media channels here on YouTube. Just let me know your address. I will get this in the mail to you, get a tracking number to you, and get it sent your way. Hopefully it helps out and you're able to make some content with it. But thanks for watching, guys. Hope this helped in your scanning of Ektar. It's a beautiful film. It takes a little bit or a lot of getting used to. I'm still learning myself, so if you have any tips you want to share with the community, please feel free to share those down below. Give the video a thumbs up, like, and subscribe. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.